You know that feeling, right? Few things in life really compare to that intense, completely intoxicating rush when you're first falling in love. It's thrilling, it's passionate, and let's just be totally honest here, it can be incredibly blinding. So welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack 12 early warning signs that a relationship might not actually be built to last. And look, our goal here isn't to be cynical, not at all. It's really just to equip you to spot those early red flags before you invest way too much time into something that simply isn't right for you. When we first meet someone, it's like we strap on these massively thick rose-tinted glasses. You know the ones? They basically allow us to overlook pretty much anything questionable about our shiny new partner. But here is the inevitable reality check. That feeling, it doesn't last forever. As a relationship gets a bit more serious, those super intense emotions kind of start to stabilize. And when they do, those little quirks or minor annoyances that you completely glossed over, yeah, they suddenly sharpen in clarity, and they very often reveal themselves to be fundamental issues. The crazy thing is, the problems that end up tearing relationships apart years later are almost always right there, hiding in plain sight from the very beginning. Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of all these 12 warning signs, we've organized them into a really clear framework. We're going to look at 4 diagnostic pillars today. 1. Structural flaws. 2. Loss of independence. 3. Imbalance and disrespect. And finally, 4. Toxic communication. Let's start right off with theme 1, structural flaws, missing a solid foundation. This covers relationships that, right from the get-go, just don't have the groundwork to survive. A major structural flaw is a bond built solely on that romantic pull. Romance is crucial, obviously, but it's really just one piece of the puzzle. If you don't share common interests or goals or life experiences, your foundation is incredibly weak. Honestly, it's exactly like the little pig who built his house out of straw. It's just going to collapse the second there's any real pressure. Another massive issue here is timing. Sometimes, no matter how much you might want it to work, you're just on entirely different life paths. Maybe one of you really needs to prioritize studies or a demanding career. Bad timing alone can totally collapse what might have otherwise been an amazing match. And this brilliantly illustrates another critical structural flaw, which involves your social circles. As the old saying goes, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. A partner's social circle is a pretty direct reflection of them. So if you're constantly clashing or just outright disliking their friends, it actually implies that on some fundamental level, you might not really like the person you're with. It's a huge early sign of a mismatch. So if you're finding yourself maybe ignoring these foundational cracks, you really have to stop and ask yourself a hard question. Are you sacrificing who you are just to stay together? And that question brings us perfectly to theme 2, loss of independence, losing your true self. Because look, a healthy relationship should always enhance your life, right? It shouldn't erode your individual identity or make you entirely dependent on your partner. So what does losing your independence actually look like? Well, first, it's spending so much time together that your partner basically becomes your entire world, completely excluding everyone else. It sounds romantic, sure, but in reality, it breeds a really unhealthy dependence. Second, it's feeling like you just can't be yourself. We all kind of filter our personalities on those first few dates, like a polished Instagram pic, right? But if you're on, say, date number 200 and you still feel the need to put on that first impression suit and filter who you really are, there is definitely trouble ahead. And third, it's facing constant criticism under the guise of it being for your own good, where they're trying to tweak everything from your clothes to the way you speak. If you're currently justifying that kind of constant critique just to salvage a relationship, you really need to hear this. You are a gem. You are not a lump of coal that needs dressing up. Sacrificing your incredibly unique, valuable self to appease a hypercritical partner, that means you are settling. You're giving up who you are for someone who simply doesn't see your true worth. And trust me, that is never a sustainable way to live. So, take a hard look at your current dynamic and ask yourself this stark question. Do you honestly feel like you are giving significantly more than you are getting back? If the answer to that is yes, then we are stepping right into theme 3, imbalance and disrespect. Imbalance and control issues. This pillar is all about those situations where the partnership feels completely one-sided, or where mutual respect is just totally MIA. The warning signs here are highly behavioral. It's stuff like you doing literally all the work, you're starting all the conversations, you're planning all the dates, while they just kind of coast along for the ride. It's noticing that your opinions are constantly being overridden, or even worse, decisions are just made for you without any input at all, and you're expected to just quietly follow along.
And crucially, it's keeping a close eye on how your partner interacts with the world outside of your little relationship bubble. Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is spotting that classic Jekyll and Hyde dynamic. Are they incredibly sweet and soft-spoken to you, but then suddenly unreasonably impatient and rude to a waiter or an Uber driver or the person behind the counter? If your partner acts one way towards you and entirely differently towards strangers, you should be highly, highly wary. That initial kindness they directed at you might just be a carefully constructed facade to win you over. Remember, true respect is universal. It is never selective. Which brings us to our final pillar, theme 4, toxic communication, toxic conflict, and distrust. Even if you manage to have a solid foundation and mutual respect, volatile arguing and poor communication will rapidly sap the life and energy right out of any partnership. Now, let's be super clear here. Occasional conflict, when it's handled constructively, is completely healthy. It actually helps couples understand their differences. But if that conflict turns into constant, volatile screaming matches really early on in the relationship, that is a glaring sign of incompatibility. You're basically sapping all your energy just to argue, which leaves zero room to actually grow closer. Add to that a lack of trust, like, checking each other's phones on the sly, and you're completely destroying that foundation of honesty and vulnerability that a lasting bond literally requires to survive. Let's move to and see how this builds, because toxicity isn't always loud, right? Sometimes communication breaks down super quietly. Passive-aggressive behavior is a massive red flag. We're talking about those little backhanded compliments, totally avoiding direct communication, heavy sarcasm, constantly playing the victim, or holding on to these deep, deep grudges. What this means is that there's a fundamental break in two-way communication. If you guys cannot approach a problem constructively and openly, this kind of quiet toxicity will absolutely be the death of the relationship if it keeps up. As we step back and look at all 12 of these signs across our 4 pillars, we really have to remember one undeniable truth. Perfection is a total myth. No relationship is flawless. And look, there is always going to be compromise. But there is a massive difference between compromising on small quirks, like whose turn it is to do the dishes, and compromising on your core boundaries. Settling for less than what you actually require to be fulfilled, that isn't a compromise. It's a self-sabotaging mistake. So the crucial point is this. Take a step back. Look at your own relationship or even your past ones through this lens. Are you ignoring any of these early signs? Are you sacrificing the wonderful, absolutely unique you for someone who simply doesn't see your worth? Your time and your emotional energy are just incredibly valuable. Recognize these flags early. Always trust your gut and demand the respect and the healthy dynamic you truly deserve. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this gives you exactly the clarity you need.